my name is Matthew Phifer with MattPhiferCoaching.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, I help people who are in narcissistically abusive relationships and toxic relationships. And I help people move on, help people heal, and help bring clarity to some situations that they might be going through. So make sure that you hit the subscribe notification. You hit the bell notification also, so then you are notified each and every time I upload a new video. And if you want my help, make sure you send me an email. Send it to justaskmatt@mattphifercoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@mattphifercoaching.com. Just make sure that the email is 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. But if you, and also give me a little bit of time, because it does take me some time to get through all the emails. I do get a lot of emails. I also have a lot of other ventures that I have going on as well, so just give me a little bit of time. But the fastest way to work with me is to be a part of my Toxic to Triumph community. All of those links are down below. With that being said, let's get to this email. So this email reads, hello, hopefully I'm not too late and you're not too late. You can email me at any time, right? This is just what I do. This is a part of my channel. This is how my channel works. So you can email me at any time, as long as we're keeping things 2 to 3 paragraphs max and you're being very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. I saw your IG post about emailing, and you can follow me. Feel free to follow me on any of my social media platforms. I offer something a little bit different on each platform. Quick background: my narcissistic ex, also my son's father, cut ties with my mom because he's caught on his antics. And so I'm going to give a little bit of clarity. I'm going to give some foreshadowing here. Right, so where we're headed with this is that the mother and the father of the person who wrote this email, right, is trying to mediate between the narcissist and their daughter, right? So this narcissist who cut off the mom, it would almost be like the equivalent of cutting off mediation or cutting off all communication with court and that sort of thing. So let's continue with this email. However, my dad is all ears now that my father is involved because my ex runs to him about the chaos he starts. My dad looks at me like the bad guy as we are trying to co-parent. When I don't react, he calls my dad. When I do react, he calls my dad. Frankly, he's called him even when we're together to come clean about him cheating, even though I never told my parents about the cheating. So my question, now that I've established a parallel parenting plan, you did not establish a parallel parenting plan. I'm about to get in your ass here in a second, right? So my question, now that I've established a parallel parenting plan by way of my parents, my son's father ignores all parties once he's eagerly got involved, right? So when we talk about boundaries, and I'm going to get into this a lot more in depth here in a second, boundaries are enforceable, right? So let's put a bookmark there. Your parents can't enforce shit. So these are not boundaries. This is not a parallel parenting plan, right? So we're seeing where the wheels are coming off. We have to understand, right, that narcissists don't think that the rules apply to them. Right, so what are your parents going to do? Go knock on his door? Or they're gonna try to enforce custody orders? Right, they don't have, right, any type of authority. Right, good for them for trying. Right, but these type of dynamics work for two people who have a level of empathy, who care. You know, don't get me wrong. There are parents out there, right, that are able to do something like this, and it works. But if we're talking about someone who's narcissistic, it's not going to work. We're going to bring some clarity to that here in a second. When he does decide to get our son to spite me, do I let him? Our son's 1.5. I'm terrified to let him walk all over me, right? It'll only get worse as our son gets older, and I agree with you. Thank you so much for utilizing your platform to aid in many victims such as this. So I agree with you, and I tell people we have to pay close attention to how we feel. You are right, and you already know the answer to this question, right? Quite often I get on people when we know the answer, right? And I'm doing this out of love, right? I've been here before, right? where we know we have the answer of what's happening, right? You said yourself, I'm terrified of letting this person walk all over me. What does that tell you? That tells you, right, that this plan isn't working. The reason why it's not working is because it's not a boundary. It's actually not a, let me rephrase. It's not the appropriate boundary for what's actually happening here. So let's talk about boundaries for a second, right? We actually have boundaries all around us, right? Boundaries are enforceable. So let's use the speed limit as an example. That's a boundary, right? Everyone knows what happens if you get caught speeding, right? If you get caught speeding, you get a ticket, you get a fine, your points on your license go up, that sort of thing, right? However, if you get caught going 110 miles per hour over the speed limit, there's a whole different circumstance that actually happens, right? When we're at that point, guess what? Your license is revoked, your car is impounded, right? So what I'm getting at is that boundaries are enforceable, right? And we have a person, and you already know what this person is like. You have a very clear-cut history, and I'm hearing some elements that you also are trying to hold on to some control here. I noticed that it's not calling you a narcissist or anything like that. However, one of the things that we have to talk about, we have to be very clear about, is that even people who struggle with codependency can be very controlling as well. I'm hearing elements that you guys still hang out together, right? That's not a boundary, right? These are very flimsy, flaky boundaries for someone who has some narcissistic traits at the very, very least. Right, so if we're spending time with them, and he's talking to your dad, and he's doing this, and why would he listen? Right, of course, in a narcissist mind, I can show up anytime I want, right? Because this is a bullshit parallel parenting plan made by your parents, right? What are they gonna do? They can't do anything. They can't enforce it, right? We have to understand that when we're in a custody situation, custody arrangement, right, and we have no rules, right, and no way to enforce, right, this has to go to court, period, right? And I get it. A lot of people want to avoid court at all costs because, number one, it costs money. Number two, it's very nerve-wracking. And number three, quite often people don't want to do it because the reality of it is that I have a feeling you don't want to piss him off, because you alluded to the fact that you guys still hang out together, which means that, guess what? You're going to have to break this trauma bond, right? There's a part of you that still wants him to be around and things like that, right? You don't want this to quite be over. You kind of want him to stick around and things like that. We need to break this goddamn trauma bond, period. Right? Because this isn't you mentioned this. You already said this. It's not healthy for you or your son. Right? And so if your parents can't enforce this, right, it's also not fair to ask them to. He's already not listening to this anyway, right? So we need to take this to the next level. We need to take this to court and have an actual parenting plan put in place, right? And parallel parenting is not still hanging out with them, right? Parallel parenting is not still communicating outside of the child and that sort of thing, right? Where they can just show up anytime they want to, right? Parallel parenting is that we have some concrete boundaries in place, and then if this were to happen and you had an actual custody arrangement through court, you can enforce it, right? You don't even have to do anything. You just say to your lawyer or to the judge, listen, this person is showing up anytime they want. They're using our child as a pawn in a game. They're not they're supposed to pick our son up every Saturday at 11 a.m. They're showing up anytime they want to, and then guess what court does? They enforce certain rules, certain guidelines based on that person's behavior. You have none of that. Right, so these boundaries are very, very weak. These boundaries would be good, healthy, if we were dealing with a healthy person, if we were co-parenting with a healthy person. We're not. Right, we are not. Right, so we're going to have to take your feelings and your emotions more serious, right? The fact that you already know that he has the potential of walking all over you, which is the part that I said that I agreed with, right? But this is chaotic, and you may have heard me say this on other occasions. Narcissists thrive in chaos. It's the reason why you notice he has no concerns here, right? I haven't heard of him having any issues with anything that's going on, because he knows that he can continue to run his game on your dad, on your mom, on you. Sometimes he might listen to things. It's based on how he feels and what he wants when he wants it, right? Why would he change this? Right? Why would he change this arrangement? Guess who still has control? Right? And I alluded to I mentioned to the fact that hearing some elements of your own control issues here too. And I don't know if you follow me on my lives and things like that, but something that I say quite often is that the things that you try to control end up controlling you. Right? So if you notice that you are trying to control some dynamics in here, right, guess what happens? You end up being the one who ends up getting controlled, right? You start to notice that your emotions fluctuate with not knowing what's going to happen, with whether or not he's going to show up, whether or not he's going to be there for these parties that you're talking about, right? And so because you really don't have control over other people, you think you do, right? You try to, you care, right? I hear a lot of elements of you caring a lot about what people think of you and that sort of thing. Right, a lot of people-pleasing behavior, a lot of possible codependent behavior, right? And quite often we struggle with that type of level of control, right? We have to begin to let go. We have to begin to set actual clear-cut boundaries in court, right? Yeah, he's going to be pissed off. He's allowed to be pissed off. And going back to your father, your dad's allowed to think whatever he wants. Right? And we have to understand that this mess, right, with the dad being involved, guess why this is happening? Because we're not setting proper boundaries through court. Get your parents out of it. Right? I always say that you have to have boundaries in 5 different areas: mental, emotional, physical, physical boundaries around your finances, boundaries around your time, and around your time/energy, right? You have a narcissist that is completely running your house, your parents' house, right? And is creating havoc because you're not setting boundaries appropriately with the appropriate people, right? Which would be legally through court, right? Which then can be enforced. So thank you very much for writing in. Once again, anyone else who would like to write in, make sure you send it to justaskmatt@mattphifercoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@mattphifercoaching.com. Just make sure you keep the email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. And once again, the fastest way to get in touch with me, the fastest way to work with me, is to be a part of my Toxic to Triumph community, and all of that is linked down below. Until then, I will see you in the next video.